Welcome back to another episode of the Sales Gravy Podcast. I'm Jeb Blount, and today I've got Helen Fanucci on the podcast to talk about why you need to start loving your sales team. Now, this podcast is for sales leaders, but if you're a sales professional, you want to stick around because there's some information in here that you're going to want to give to your sales leader to make them love you more so that you stick around, you sell more. First of all, I want you to go check out Sales Gravy University. You can find Sales Gravy University at learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com. There is a reason why many of the most prestigious brands in the world use the courses on Sales Gravy University to train their teams. We have sales experts from every walk of life who teach their courses on Sales Gravy University. And this is what makes us different, we offer live courses every single week that you can attend with your peers. And a lot of entire sales teams come together to these courses that are taught by our master trainers. There really isn't anything like it out there. And you can take your first course for free. So if you've never taken a course on Sales Gravy University, just go to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com. Drop in the code free course and check it out. Any course you want, just drop in the code free course and it's yours. Helen, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I got an early review of your book, and as soon as I started reading it, it was like 11:30 at night. It was sent to me by someone that wrote the foreword to your book, but it was sent to me early and said, you got to read this book. And I was just blown away because you and I share a very similar philosophy when it comes to sales leadership and what matters most. And I'm going to throw a line that's in a book I wrote back, it's been 10 years, called People Follow You. And the line is this: you get paid for what your people do, not what you do. Therefore, it is in your best interest to make sure that you are doing things that allow them to do their jobs. One of the things I've always encouraged sales leaders to do is look at your paycheck. You didn't do that. The salespeople who work for you did that. I want you to take that statement and give you the floor to maybe riff on that a little bit and talk to us about why that means something to, or why it should mean something to sales leaders in terms of how they're approaching their role as a sales leader with their teams.
Oh, I love that statement. I agree 1,000%. And the focus of the book is all about helping sales leaders support their team more effectively, remove roadblocks and blockers, the friction that comes with selling, and also use their positional power to help their sellers get to additional executives in the organization. So a lot of sales books are really externally focused on closing deals or customer conversations. This is 100% focused on helping a leader amplify the effectiveness of their sellers. And one of the things I deeply believe is their sellers, their top talent is their number one customer. And if they're not focused there, they're really missing the mark of amplifying their own success.
What is it that you see sales leaders focused on other than that? So you say that the center of your universe should be your sales team. Right. And you should be doing everything you can to get that team in position to win.
Right.
What do you see sales leaders doing that's not that?
Yeah. So interestingly, I had a conversation today with somebody and they said, you know what? You know, our sales leaders, they do every Monday morning, they do a call. They're, ramping up to get their team ready to sell this week. How are your Monday morning calls going? And I said, you know what? I don't do them. That is a one-way street typically where sales leaders are shouting at their team, encouraging their team, yelling at their team, whatever they're doing. And where I think, we've got to kind of pause and slow down for a minute is a sales leader needs to understand what motivates their team members. The focus of my approach is on regular one-on-ones with my team, every 2 weeks. Sometimes we do more frequently, some less, but really to understand what motivates them. Because if COVID has, taught us that something's going on with everybody. So I had 1 week a year ago, fall of 2021, where 3 of my team members ended up in the emergency room for non-COVID reasons. And that same month, 2 members of my team had siblings that passed away due to COVID. That same month, one of our coworkers committed suicide. And so human beings can't perform unless they're okay. And it behooves the sales leader to understand what motivates their team, but importantly, what is going on with them that might prevent them from being their best, and help support that individual, or at least have compassion short term if they're going through something. And success on the seller's part will differ seller to seller. It could be promotions. It could be, I had a seller that wanted to go work in another country for Microsoft. And of course, achieving sales results and targets is ante in the game. And so, that's also a center point of the conversation. But my book is people-centric first. And I've been very successful delivering multi-billion-dollar quotas by being able to help my sellers, support my sellers, and amplify their success. And I give pragmatic how-to guidance in the book, 17 conversation chapters devoted to different aspects of what I believe a sales manager needs to attend to support their team.
The name of the book is Love Your Team, a survival guide for sales managers in a hybrid world.
Right.
So when you talk about being a human and really getting into the trenches with your team, I just go back to my favorite job. So as I was rising through the corporate world, and very much like you, I started at the bottom and I moved my way up. The one stop that I took where I was a field level sales leader and I had a team of 10 salespeople who were working for me was my favorite job that I ever had. Now I've had multiple sales management jobs along the way. But the very last one before I started really moving into the upper echelons and moving into the VP roles and running massive sales teams globally, I loved that job more than anything because it was building my own tribe. I had this group of people that would run through the wall, do anything, but they competed with each other. They loved each other. We learned together. We failed together. To me, that was the best part of being a leader, was to have that group of people around me. And through all of my time in the corporate world, I never could find another leadership role where you really could do that. One of the reasons was because sales is so competitive, and because it's really easy to look at a salesperson and say, is this person successful or not? Because there's typically a number attached to it. So as a leader, building that team around you, it's just, to me, it's just the most satisfying thing I ever did as a leader, as a person. But one of the things that I remember, this is back, my wife and I lived in Memphis at one time, and I was running the sales team in the Mid-South for a large, multinational global company. And she would say, why are you on the phone at 11 o'clock at night? Why are you sitting in the parking lot having a conversation with that sales rep after work? Why are you getting in your car and going to have coffee with someone? And I would always explain to her, I would say, this person is going to walk into the biggest deal of their life tomorrow morning, and their spouse just walked out the door. Their kid just got sick. They're struggling with, how to pay for something. And all they need is someone to talk to. But if they walk in tomorrow morning into that big deal where everything is on the line, by the way, no different than an athlete going into a game, and they're thinking about that and not thinking about their performance because I wasn't there for them, I'm going to lose. It's going to hurt me. So being there for your team, being there as, and sometimes you almost have to be an amateur psychologist. And I hate to say that because there are tons of books that say don't do that as a leader, but you just got to be there sometimes and listen to them. And I don't know that sales leaders always understand how intimate this particular role is when it comes to the people on your team that you're surrounding yourself with.
Yeah, so true. So, one of the things that I've adopted, I don't know if you're familiar with the book, The Coaching Habit, but it suggests that coaching is really about asking questions. and clarifying, and someone might come to you and say, hey, I need some advice on X, Y, or Z, but you're not in their shoes. So getting underneath what's really going on and being curious is an attribute I think managers need to have with their teams. It's not about tell, it's about listen, ask questions, understand. And it's super pragmatic. If you have a seller, a top seller with, let's say, $1 million quota, and they walk out the door day one of the fiscal year, it takes at least 3 months to replace them. If you can find the talent, that's $250,000 at risk, and another 5 or 6 months to get up to full strength, 500,000 at risk. In addition, so that's 750,000 out of the $1 million. So if you can't retain your talent, you're in trouble as a sales leader. So it's economically pragmatic, but it also unlocks the door to really amplify success. And like you, I am a drive-by, the door's open, send me an IM, text me, I'm happy for a drive-by conversation. I'd rather be available, and, if something is up that they want to talk about. So while I have a regular cadence, it's always, the door's open, and I'd rather talk to them about that. And that is super satisfying because I also, help them with strategy. I also, intervene if there's performance issues. And in fact, a couple of my, biggest fans are people who, had performance issues and were on a performance improvement plan and stepped up, and I coached them and I supported them. And then, they're great performers. So you can't substitute the one-on-one connection with your team, I think.
Yeah, it's super important. And when we start thinking about performance and forecast and goals, one of the things that I landed on really early in my career as a sales leader was sitting down with my people and developing goal sheets. So typically we'd have breakfast, but I would say, tell me what you want, tell me what you're looking for, tell me what you value. And we would start working through basically laying out in their world and their language, the things that were important to them. And, so many sales leaders these days have a difficult time hitting their forecast. There's always a salesperson who may be behind. But what I found is when I stopped talking about forecasts and I started talking about quotas and I started talking about swimming pools and houses and sending kids to college and the things that were really important to them, then it was a lot easier for them to step into what they had to do as a salesperson in order to achieve those goals. And I think we have to be wise enough to understand that most of the things that we're asking salespeople to do, they don't want to do. And is very difficult for them to do as a human being. It is not natural for human beings to do most of the things that we ask people to execute in sales, which is facing rejection or facing the potential for losing something or having a set of goals and quotas that if you don't hit, you might not keep your job. So I think that as leaders, we have to get that this is a one-to-one relationship. There is certainly enough data out there to tell us that people don't leave companies; they leave managers. In the book, you use it was either Gartner or Gallup. I think it was Gallup, but it was a Gallup poll that says that 70% of people, they value the relationship they have their manager. That's what matters most to them, not the job itself, which is true. Right. So, but we also, when we start thinking about how we build these relationships, I want to make sure that we don't. And I know you're not saying this in the book, but we're not saying that sales leadership should be kumbaya. I built a tribe of people around me in a tough environment where you were expected to perform, and they would do anything in the world to hit their numbers. Not everybody was the same. Some people were superstars. Some people were they were my bench players. But it is about the relationship with your people. What I think the point I'm trying to make is that if you're a leader or you're an aspiring leader, this can be the best job you've ever had if you make it about your people. It can be the most boring, tedious, worst job you have if you make it about the numbers and the data and the meetings and all the meetings, the meetings and the meetings and the meetings. If you make it about that and you make it about you. And
right.
So let's back up real quickly to to coaching. So you used some information from the coaching habit. We know that when you're coaching salespeople, that a question that you ask is more important than anything that you'll ever say. And anything that you say to a salesperson is going to be much more impactful when it's delivered in the form of a question. If we were to look at sales leadership and sales coaching, it is a language of questions. That is something that I find that sales leaders writ large really struggle with. They are closed-ended, leading question. They are talking at, broadcasting at, and they are not slowing down and using questions to challenge their salespeople to think differently, to open up to new possibilities, and to help salespeople find answers that they already know the answer to, so that they can move along a path and have ownership and essentially be empowered to go out and get stuff done. How are you addressing that with the people that you work with in terms of how do we help today's leaders actually become good coaches?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So the orientation needs to be off the leader and on to their team. So there's some foundational skills or principles which I think are critical for success. So for example, ability to build trust with your team. And I talk about that. And I talk about, well, you've just got a new job and you need to introduce yourself to your team. How do you go about doing that? And each of the conversation chapters, by the way, is here's how traditional sales managers do it. Here's how love your team
give us
managers
an example
do it.
of that. So give us an example of how traditional sales managers do it and how sales managers who love their team do it.
Right. So so introducing yourself to your team. So I've been on the receiving end of a new leader coming in and introducing themselves, and it's all about them, their resume, their career, and there's nothing in it about helping the sellers understand their leadership philosophy, their point of view, what kind of approach they're going to take with a team, how to interact with them. There's nothing that kind of reverses it to say, okay, here's here's what I'm expecting from you, but here's my philosophy. So for me, I put culture first. I also have outcome performance objectives, clarity of performance objectives, and attaining those objectives, a regular cadence and rhythm of checkpointing. I have that, no surprises. I want bad news, good news to travel fast, no surprises. And that, it's really about them and supporting them. And then I also talk about, okay, here's what you can expect from me. We're going to do a one-on-one and no prep is needed. It is, show up. I just want to learn about you. I want to understand what makes you tick. And then, we'll have ongoing one-on-ones. And, if you have something top of mind about the business, absolutely, don't hesitate to bring it up. But the orientation, I believe, again, from the get-go, you need to set the tone that you care about the team and that you're there to help make them successful, not about all the accolades and you're a big man on campus, so to speak, and just got this big, great job. So I've seen that, difference, like compare and contrast that's what I would say in terms of how traditional managers might do it. And I've been on the receiving end versus a love your team manager.
Yeah, nobody cares about you. But let's be real. If we think about your ability to influence the behavior of the people on your team, the data tells us that there is a certain amount of experience that gives you credibility walking through the door. So you got the job. If you were successful, if you had crushed your numbers someplace, like the first sales leadership job I got, I was the number one salesperson in the entire company, and then I got to be a sales leader. So I walked in with that, okay, which is dangerous because that's exactly how you lose your sales team. But I did walk in with it. So you get a little bit of credibility walking through the door. The minute you say, I had a sales leader who did this once, met him for the very first time, walks through the door, he goes, here are my 5 non-negotiables. That was the first thing out of his mouth. And he was fired with I think almost 9 months, he was gone. because the sales team abandoned him. Like the sales team walked out and said, "We're not doing this for you." And but that's, you get a little bit for that. What people care about are really two things. This is the data about how people are influenced by you as a leader. Do you have my best interest at heart? So are you a person I can trust that is going to put me first? Are you going to get me in position to win? So for example, you used a really good example. I've got a deal on the line. I need approval someplace in the organization, up the chain. You're a person that can make the connection between me and the executive. And in a large organization, it could be people inside the matrix that you've got to go find that will approve a deal. You're able to do that for me. Are you a person who has my best interest at heart? And are you a person who can get me in position to win? Those two things matter greatly, right? So, and one is trust, one is relationship, and one is, do I believe in you? And the thing that when I meet like terrible sales leaders, and I've worked for a couple, they don't have my best interest at heart. They're only about themselves. They're just trying to get to the next rung on the ladder. And they can't put me in position to win because they're morons and they're not as good as me. And that doesn't mean that as a sales leader, you have to be as good as me, but you're a moron. And you're basically a product of the Peter principle. So you got in that role. And I think that if you're a sales leader and you are over your head, you're better off telling your team, you know what? You guys know more about this than I do. Tell me how I can help you. And I've been in that position before. I've I took over national accounts one time and I'm like, you guys have been here for 20 years. I've been here for like 2 months. I don't know anything. Teach me. So people dig that. They love it when you're humble. They love it when you're open. They love it when you're transparent. And then you got to be thinking to yourself, what am I doing every single day to get my people in position to win? That's your job, coach. Period. End of story. Go ahead.
So good. Another example is, so we talked about getting deal approval for discounts or investments. So we have this deal review board with our top senior executive VP, who, for big deals, is in the room. He's the decision maker. So there's a lot of steps before you get to in the room, so to speak, and it's all virtual now. So I have my team, my seller is doing the presentation. He or she put together the business case. They're presenting. I'm in the back, with the camera off. I take notes. I take action items because I want them present, in the conversation. And it does three things. It has the seller gets exposure to senior execs within the company. Number two, they get skills and confidence in delivering the presentation. And number three, we debrief after the call. What went well? What didn't go so well? Did we achieve our objectives? And that's how I do it. But I've seen sales leaders take the baton, their seller does all the work putting together the business case, and they go present it. And I think that's backwards.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I think you're exactly right. That's what a great leader does. A great leader is going to give that person the opportunity to shine in front of executives, and they're not going to hang them out to dry. They're going to get them prepped and ready to go ahead of time. I'm sure that's what you do. Yep. And then because you're not talking, you're observing. And if we think about sales coaching, just the act of sales coaching, 80% of sales coaching is your mouth shut and your eyes and ears open. It is taking notes. It's listening, because when you do that after action review or that debrief, you're not going to coach everything. You're going to be coaching the things that are going to have the most impact for making that person better the next time they're in that situation. Better than that, though, you're creating a person who can do the work on their own. That allows you to scale yourself. If that person gets good, that your salesperson gets good at going in, presenting their case to executives, maybe the next time they don't need you in the room. Then you can go coach someone else and get them good at it. And then you can coach someone else. And this is when I go back to, you don't get paid for what you do. You get paid for what your people do. If you're doing the presentation, if you're closing the deal, you're not doing your job. All you're doing is making yourself look good or feel good, or telling your salespeople, I don't trust you to do it because you're a moron. I'm better than you are. And I've seen it happen. So as a sales leader, your job is to lift your people up. Now, Helen, this is a piece of advice that I give to new sales leaders. young
Okay.
sales leaders, okay? You're 25 years old, you're 26 years old, and you're about to get your first leadership. Maybe you're 28, 29, but you're in your 20s, you're getting your first shot at this. And people will say, well, what do I need to do to get ready to be a leader? And my answer is always, are you ready to put the needs of other people ahead of your own? Are you ready to let the other people in your team be the stars and you're behind the scenes? Are you ready to let that go? Because if your ego can't let that go, you're going to fail at this job. And I've had a few look at me and go, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, because I like being the star. I like getting the trophy. I like walking up on stage and picking up the plaque at President's Club. So I'm curious about the advice that you give new sales leaders, if people are listening, and we've got a big audience that probably I'm aspiring to be a sales leader. What advice would you give them if they're thinking, okay, I hear all this, what do I need to do right now to get myself in position and prepared when I get tapped on the shoulder and now I'm running a sales team?
Right. So my first advice is love your team. So I deliberately use that word because to me, that is all about making the other person, your team member, the center of attention. But pragmatically, get yourself a mentor, get a peer mentor, someone with more experience, maybe in another team, job shadow, go see what people are doing, learn, listen, get help. And then also, I assume, but if someone's coming in, for example, from outside of Microsoft, it's probably a bad assumption that they know the mechanics of running, CRM, what the team needs to do. They'll just learn the mechanics of what the standard is in whatever company they're at. Because those fundamentals, if you will, are the easy part. I'd also say just get to know each team member, what they care about, what makes them tick. Because I have like 3 of my sellers got promoted to be a manager, their first management job, which I'm super proud of, but we prepared for that. They shadowed me, they filled in on forecast calls, they know the job. Some of them still come back to me and say, hey, here's what I'm dealing with. What are your ideas or thoughts of it? So you've got to, this is a team sport, and find coaches for yourself that can help you grow in the role.
Great advice. Now, next question. So one thing to get promoted and you leave your team and you take over a team that doesn't know you. A totally different thing that you get promoted and now you're in charge of the people that used to be your peers. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I've done that too. Yeah. So, again, meet with everybody, and by the way, because I was their peers, I know what they do way better than I do. The other thing is, like, this is now going back 25 years or so, or more maybe. When I was first a manager, I thought I needed to tell my team how to do it because that's why I was a manager. So for me, if I'm getting promoted amongst my peers, I stay out of their way. I know what they do well. I create clarity of outcome-based expectations, what kind of frequency we're going to meet to deliver on the results, and ask them, hey, how can I help you be successful and amplify, what you're looking to accomplish in your role, whether it's a promotion, obviously making the quota, whatever.
Okay, next question. I kind of like this. Next question. You're a leader, or you're either a new leader or a veteran leader, and the company comes to you and says, we have a sales team that is broken. We've had a lot of turnover. The last sales manager didn't work out. These people are failing. When you look at the team ranking reports, you're at the bottom of the ranking report, and we need you to move to some weird place, someplace, and fix this. And you say, okay, I'll take it. What do? You show up on the first day. What should you do to put yourself in position to turn that team around?
Yeah, so I had that too. So I took over a team where the 2 first level managers left and the second level manager left, all, one fell swoop. And so I came in as a second level manager, and, one is I got to know the team that was there, but I started creating a structure of accountability, and, kind of really getting business insight and asking questions. And over 3 months, and then I hired 2 first level managers as well. But in parallel, I really was after kind of the business insight and structure to be able to figure out what we needed to do to turn around the business. So within 3 months, I was able to go from a declining month over month trajectory to a climbing month over month trajectory. Because honestly, if you're attending to the basics with customers, partners, because it was a going business, if you will, but it was decline. It was there was lack of focus. And so give focus and direction to the team. And then, within 6 months, we were growing in excess of market growth. But that's what I did. I'm an MIT trained engineer. And so I look at logic and process and try to put the pieces together. And, the team is hungry for leadership and they're hungry for some focus. And so that's what I did, and asked for help from them and others because they know more about that business, the particulars. But that's what I did.
Yeah, I think that I've been on multiple turnarounds in my career. I think one of the most important lessons I ever learned was be very careful not to try to fix everything all at once. So at one of my great leadership mentors, a guy that I worked for several times, I just love, would give me these turnaround assignments, and he would say, don't do anything. You go there and you watch and you observe and you pay attention. Don't make this mistake of walking in and assuming that you know what's wrong. And then you said something I think that was profound there, which is you really want to start looking at the basics and fundamentals. Essentially, it's an Occam's razor problem, right? So instead of trying to fix all of this peripheral stuff, focus on the most obvious reason why this team is failing and start there. We call it putting a stake in the ground. So if you're a leader, you're in that situation, put the stake in the ground and focus on the stake. And you'll make 2 big mistakes in turnarounds. 1, you try to fix everything at once, you'll fail. Well, actually 3 mistakes. 2, you try to make everybody happy, you'll fail. And 3, you try to fix something that you can't fix. So you want to focus on what's the most fundamental, basic thing that will have the biggest impact on your team's performance that you can impact. If you can't fix it, if it's outside of your control, don't waste any time on it that you can fix. And then you focus all of your attention, all your team's attention on that. Because what you want them to understand is that when you, the boss, the leader, says, we're going to fix that, we are by God going to fix it. And then when it gets fixed, move the stake. Like you did that. So in the first 3 months, you got turned. And then the 6 months later, you're going upwards. That's wonderful advice.
The other thing that happened was over time with that focus, I was able to assess the team. And it turned out we had sellers and people on the team that weren't in the right role, that needed to move on, quite frankly. And that happened over time. But I never would have, one, had the criteria really to know. And secondly, it's too much to try to address the whole thing. Just provide focus and get, step-by-step process in place.
One piece at a time. Let's go back to one-to-ones.
Yeah.
Okay. So you actually started off talking about one-to-ones. In my opinion, the one-to-one meeting is the most important meeting that the sales leader has with their sales professional. So talk to me about your philosophy, and I'm going to share my philosophy as well. So we may be in agreement. We may have 2 different sides of the coin, but your philosophy with the one-to-one meetings, how should they be structured? How do you recommend that sales leaders execute them? And is there a difference between one-to-ones with, say, a team of, say, young salespeople that are in more, short cycle or mid-cycle sales roles, and one-to-ones with salespeople who are veterans who are doing enterprise level deals and are the true sales professionals that have risen through the ranks and will likely retire. That's the job they're doing for the rest of their life because they're just that good at it. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So true confessions, my focus over the last, 15 years has been enterprise. So I'm going to I'm going to channel my earlier self for the early in profession folks. But to answer your question, so on the one-on-ones, how I have it structured is every 2 weeks. As I said, sometimes actually the sellers want it more frequently if they have a lot going on with their deals and accounts, and maybe they want more strategy or more time. And I love the strategy section, but I expect them to come prepared with an agenda and to let me know how I can be of utmost help to them. And I'll ask a few questions, or I'll ask a lot of questions, but it's their time, they're running the show. I may have some things that are on my agenda to add, and we may elongate it. It's usually 30 minutes. We may make it longer. It's not the only time that we talk about a deal, because with a company the size of Microsoft, if there's a big deal happening, there's a broader team discussion, orchestrating resources. But that's the cornerstone of my insight into the individual, how they think, how they're running their business, but also leading the cross-functional team as the one-on-ones. It's also where red flags come up. Like if they're not really talking about, if they're talking in a too much of a surface manner and not really getting into the politics or who's the decision criteria at the customer, it's a red flag on whether they really have deal control and insight. Separately, outside that one-on-one, we do a forecast rhythm. So, I have the pipeline, we have forecast calls, and that's more of a team thing, because also the team members learn from each other. But I don't care how they spend their day-to-day time. I know there's surveillance software and things like that, and people are freaked out about their teams being remote, but you put the guardrails around that, you get insight into how they're actually performing and also how they're engaged. So if you're early in your career, I would probably provide more structure to them. I do sometimes have right out of college, early in career sellers, and I provide more structure, and I usually pair them with a more senior seller, and over time they become more and more independent.
So we have a little bit of agreement there, which is it is for red flags. It is for opening up a conversation, asking a lot of questions, making sure that you understand where they are. I typically don't use one-to-ones for deal reviews. I will, there may be roadblocks that I want to know about, but I'd prefer to have deal reviews can be organic conversations. They can be framed conversations where we're working together as a group or a team. They can be in the context of a forecast meeting. But typically for me, a one-to-one shouldn't be more than 15 minutes long. Then that's just my philosophy. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I say that is because a lot of sales leaders, when you talk about span of control, they're looking at, 10, sometimes 12. And, as we start moving into a more recessionary period, you could be pushing people into 15 salespeople. So if you have 30-minute one-to-ones, you're never going to get to them. And then you're going to start breaking trust because you're going to show up to them. So I like 15 minutes for these meetings. Now, where you and I are in absolute stone cold agreement is that it is their meeting, not my meeting. I don't do any prep to show up to the one-to-one. It's their job. They have an agenda. I tell them what I want them to bring. And I do think that that's going to be different by company. It's going to be different by what you're selling. And it's going to be different by the type of seller that you're working with. With a veteran, my one-to-one may be 5 minutes long because I know you and I know what's going on in your life, and I'm just checking to make sure you're still breathing. That's all I want to know. You're breathing, you're okay, because I trust you that if something's wrong, you're going to let me know about it, and it's not going to be in the one-to-one. With a newer person, like a brand new person, I will go 30 minutes with a brand new person, even an hour with a brand new person, because sometimes one-to-one shift into training or helping them navigate something they don't know how to get to inside the organization. But most of the time with most people, 15 minutes. And all I'm doing is finger on the pulse. You said red flags. I want to know what's happening in your world. I'm not really watching for the information that you're giving me. I'm watching you because what I use one-to-ones to do is inform my coaching time. Most of my time as a sales leader should be spent with my salespeople coaching, whether that is on the phone, whether that's in a video call, whether that's in the field with them face-to-face, wherever they are. That's my job. If I'm an inside salesperson, I need to be on the floor side by side. But I want the one-to-ones to tell me where I need to be allocating my time with my team, because not everybody needs me equally. The veteran who's been around for 20 years and like shows up every day and they're a savant and all they need me to do is just clear the deck for them so they can sell more. I know what my job with them is. But I've got a lot of salespeople that are going to have differing issues, different problems. They're going to get like something's going to happen and they're going to change the way that they go about selling. They're going to get in a slump, whatever the case is. I want to know that. So I'm much more, and this is just me, and I wanted to share this because I think that one of the things that's important, and I love the transparency here, is you say this is what I do, this is what I do, and there's not one way of doing this. There's different ways, but you can see if you're listening, if you're watching, you can see, but if you're listening to this, you can see that there is an intersection here. We're looking for red flags. It's not our meeting. The salespeople do all the work. All my job is to show up, and you said the magic word for me. I ask a lot of questions. Sales leadership is a language of questions, and most of those questions should be open-ended questions that compel the person to talk to you. For me, so I can watch them to know whether or not they're okay. And if they're not okay, then I need to change what I'm doing so I can make them okay, because I get paid for what they do, not what I do.
Yeah, I love that. So just so you know, I've done the math. So my structure is 15% of my time in a given month, that kind of cadence of meetings that I'm talking about, plus the forecast calls. So I figure 15% is a okay amount. And by the way, if there's vacations, if there's customer meetings, or we're covering some of the stuff in a different form, like maybe we're traveling together, then that's a whole different thing. Yes. So,
well, let's stop there, because that's a great point. And I make this point to sales leaders all the time. You're traveling with your salesperson. Do the one-to-one then. I mean, you're meeting with them, you're having lunch, you're having breakfast. You don't need to schedule a formal one-to-one with them. So yeah, on the other side of it, if your salespeople keep scheduling customer meetings in the middle of your one-to-ones, what they're telling you is that your one-to-ones suck and you need to change them.
Yes. Or they're afraid of being called out or on something because they're falling behind, but that's a different issue.
I use language like that, Helen, because I didn't go to MIT. I went to a really crappy college and got a C average. So one of the things that I talk to sales leaders about all the time is a system of sales management. So as an engineer, that ought to connect with you.
Yeah, for sure.
So with some of the time we have left, I know that this book is really system oriented. So as you start going through it, it really lays out, hey, this is the machine for getting the most out of your team.
Right.
Give us some advice, the people that are listening, of things that they can do right now that can help them start building a system of sales management, a system that allows them to do these human things and keeps the train on the tracks.
Yeah. So if you don't have outcome-based performance expectations that are clear, get some. And for me, it's not just revenue. It's also getting higher in the organization with more senior executives, leading a strong cross-functional team, because there's like 50 people loosely affiliated or strongly affiliated with a customer. So, clear, because those objectives create the framework to checkpoint and find out, to see how an individual's doing. And it simplifies, frankly. So clarity of objectives, have some kind of connection point where you're getting to know your team, and obviously a forecast for them, et cetera. And then I would also say, what are you doing to build trust and be curious and learning some of the principles that, by the way, you probably expect your sellers to demonstrate with customers. So sellers need to build trust, have clarity, ask good questions. So it's kind of a virtuous cycle to demonstrate the behavior with your team that you expect them to see with customers.
Very good. Okay. Back early in my career, I wanted to get promoted. I was crushing my numbers. I was making it rain. And I went to my leader and said, I want more. I want to grow. and I'll never forget. I've forgiven, but I'll never forget what this leader said to me. Maybe a Freudian slip there. He said, "Over my dead body." And the reason that he said that was because I was so much of his number. Like, his business plan had been baked, and I was part of the head count. And if something happened to me, his bonus was gone, because I was making so much happen. And I remember walking away. I went home that night, and it bugged me so bad, and it grinded on me. And the next day I went in and I did my job, but I started looking. And I started looking. And then one day I get a great offer, and I go to the company, go to my boss, and said, "I'm leaving." And at that point, all hell broke loose. So they flew executives in, like, people were coming to talk to me, and I ended up getting promoted. I mean, at the end of the day, they gave me what I wanted, which was a promotion, in order to keep me in the company. It was a really poor way of doing that, because I wasn't ready for the promotion. I just wanted a career path. And in today's world, you make the point early in the book about how many people are quitting their jobs and how much opportunity there is for people out there. I just wanted to end with how important it is for sales leaders to look at each individual on their team and have a conversation about what they want to do with their career. Some people just want to be salespeople. Some people want to be leaders, but they're really not ready for it yet. And they sometimes don't even know that they're not ready for it yet. And some people, they want more, they desire more, they want your job, they want someone else's job, but they don't have a path to get there, nor do they have an advocate within the organization that is telling other people why this person should get promoted. And maybe this isn't important, but I think it is to think about the sales leader's role in developing their people for bigger opportunities and more important roles within the organization, and what specifically should they be doing. You said you just had 3 people that you were able to promote off your team. So clearly this is something that's important to you. And I want to end with this, because I just want you to tell leaders exactly what they should be doing with their people to make sure that their folks see a future, so that they're not leaving you for someplace else because they don't see any future in your organization.
Right. And it's gotten more acute now, because with remote work, you're not just competing with other companies in your industry or your geography. You're competing with every company on the planet for talent. So what I do is I have at a minimum twice a year intentional career discussion. This is outside of the regular one-on-one, but okay, find out, what do they want to do career-wise? Are they good where they are? Are they looking for a promotion? Do they want to be a manager? Do they want to change geography? And, do they see themselves, how long do they see themselves staying at Microsoft or at this role? Because nobody stays at a company forever. Let's just be frank about it. So how can I help them? And are there places within Microsoft where they can, fulfill that ambition, and then create a plan? And, it's career self-reliance. So at the end of the day, it's on them to take the actions, but there's mentoring, and there's, buddy systems, and there's shadowing. There's all sorts of how to grow a person. But the first order of business is find out and then commit yourself to figuring out how to help them achieve that outcome. Because, it's kind of tragic, really, that your company had to go through all of those gymnastics to get you to stay, and that manager was so short-sighted to not listen, take you seriously. It was all about him. And you're just going to lose people that way. So that's what I would do.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Very good. Helen Fanucci, Love Your Team, a survival guide for sales managers in a hybrid world. Hold that book cover up for us.
Yes.
Congratulations.
So excited.
There you go. Hold it back right there so we can see it. Congratulations. It's a big deal to write a book. And this book is out right now. Tell people where they can get this book and where they can learn more about you and your awesome content. And by the way, I've also watched some beautiful videos of you on YouTube. So there's some great videos of you speaking in different places and interviews. This will be up on YouTube very soon as well. So tell people where they can find more about you.
Well, LinkedIn is a good starting place. The book is on Amazon. So look for it there. And I'd love to know, the listeners, I'd love to know what you think. So ping me on LinkedIn or write a review on Amazon. That would be awesome. So that's how they can find me.
Very good. It's been such a pleasure having you on. I truly mean this. Congratulations on this book. It is wonderful. I couldn't put it down. It's just everything that I believe about sales leadership are in the pages of these books, are in the pages of this book, and I can tell that it's written by a practitioner, a person who's actually done it, not some guru out there who doesn't really understand it, but they're just trying to get a book out. You've done a wonderful job with this. I hope everybody will go out and pick up this book. Helen, thank you for joining me on the Sales Gravy podcast.
Thank you, Jeb. It really touches my heart, your comments. I really appreciate your support. And thank you for reading the book early and having me on your podcast.
Very good. Now, listen, if you want to learn how to lead people and after you've read Helen's book, you want some more, go to Sales Gravy University. You can go to Sales Gravy University at learn.salesgravy.com, learn.salesgravy.com. We just put up a course for like social selling for sales leaders, how to lead your team to be better social sellers. And we've got tons of courses like that from some of the top trainers in the world. And right now, if you've never taken a course on Sales Gravy University, you can go there for free. Use free course. Pick any course you want. And there's leadership courses, and there's prospecting courses, and there's how to sell courses, and there are live courses. Use free course at learn.salesgravy.com, learn.salesgravy.com. We'll see you next time on the Sales Gravy Podcast.